You ever notice how the loudest Haiti always sounds the weakest right before it breaks? They laughed at you, mocked you, picked you apart like you were nothing, like your silence meant you had no story, no power, no edge. They thought you were stuck, thought you'd stay exactly where they left you beneath them. But here's the funny thing about pressure. It doesn't destroy everyone. Some people don't crack, they sharpen. While they were busy hating, you were building, quietly, patiently, taking every insult, every doubt, every moment they tried to make you feel small, and turning it into something heavier, something dangerous. And now the same person who couldn't stand the sight of you can't even stand themselves. The tables didn't just turn, they snapped. Hard, fast, brutal, because nothing hits harder than watching someone you tried to break become unbreakable right in front of you. Funny how silence makes people uncomfortable. They start filling it with their own noise. They see you not reacting, not defending, not explaining yourself, and it drives them insane. Because in their world, power is loud. It argues, it proves, it begs to be seen. But you chose something different. You chose to disappear in plain sight. While they were waiting for a reaction, you were studying the game. While they kept throwing words like knives, you were learning how to stop bleeding. They thought your quiet meant weakness, that you had nothing to say, nothing to fight back with. They mistook your patience for fear, your calm for surrender. And that's the part that makes it all so beautiful. Because the truth is, silence isn't empty. It's full of everything they can't understand. It's where plans are made, where discipline is forged, where the chaos inside you gets shaped into something sharp enough to cut through anything they throw at you. You didn't need to prove anything. That's what they never understood. Every insult they threw, every time they tried to drag your name through the dirt, every little moment they thought they were winning, it was all fuel. You collected it. You let it sit. You let it burn slowly, deeply, turning into something heavier than anger, something controlled. Because anger screams, but power waits. And while they were busy watching your every move, hoping to see you fall, they missed the part where you started rising. Not loudly, not dramatically, just piece by piece. A habit here, a mindset there. You built yourself in ways they couldn't track, couldn't measure, couldn't interrupt. They were too distracted by who you used to be, stuck in an old version of you that didn't exist anymore. That's the trick about staying quiet. People get comfortable underestimating you. They relax. They stop paying attention. They think they've already figured you out, already won. And that's when it happens, not all at once, but enough to shake them. You change. Your energy shifts. Your presence gets heavier, sharper. Suddenly, the same people who ignored you start noticing something they can't explain. They feel it before they understand it. That uneasiness. That subtle realization that something isn't the same anymore. Because you're not reacting like before. You're not chasing validation. You're not playing their games. And that scares them more than any words ever could. Because they can't control what they can't read. Silence gave you that edge. It gave you time to grow without interference, without opinions, without distractions. It forced you to face yourself without the noise, without the masks. And in that quiet, you found something real, something solid, something they could never take from you, no matter how hard they tried. They wanted a reaction, but what they got instead was a transformation they never saw coming. Pain is funny. People think it's supposed to break you, like it has one job. Tear you down, leave you empty, turn you into something small. That's what they expect when they hurt you. That's what they count on. Every insult, every betrayal, every moment they tried to make you feel worthless, they believed it was doing damage that couldn't be undone. And maybe at first it did. Maybe it hit deeper than you'd like to admit. Maybe it sat in your chest, heavy, suffocating, making everything feel slower, darker. Pain has a way of crawling under your skin, whispering things you don't want to hear. It tells you you're not enough, that you deserved it, that you should just stay down. And for a moment you listened. Not because you're weak, but because pain is convincing when it's fresh. But here's where things start to twist. Most people try to run from pain. They numb it, ignore it, distract themselves from it. They treat it like an enemy that needs to be escaped. You didn't. You sat with it. You let it breathe. You let it burn through you instead of around you. And in that fire, something started to change. Because pain, when you stop running from it, becomes something else entirely. It becomes awareness. You start seeing things clearer. The fake smiles, the hidden intentions, the patterns you ignored before. It sharpens your instincts. It teaches you where not to stand, who not to trust, what not to tolerate. Every scar becomes a reminder, not of weakness, but of lessons learned the hard way. And then it goes deeper. That same pain they thought would destroy you, it starts feeding you. Every time you remember what they said, what they did, how they made you feel, it pushes you, not in a chaotic, reckless way, but in a focused, controlled way. You don't lash out, you don't explode, you build. Late nights, early mornings, quiet decisions no one sees. You start putting pieces together, discipline, patience, control. The kind of things pain forces you to learn when you're tired of feeling helpless. You stop asking,
Why did this happen to me?
And start asking, what can I turn this into? That's when it becomes dangerous, because now, pain isn't just something you survived. It's something you're using. Every doubt they planted turns into motivation. Every time they tried to break you becomes a reason to push harder. You start craving growth the same way you once feared the hurt. You start realizing that the very thing they used against you is now working for you, and they don't see it coming. They still think you're carrying that same weight, still stuck in that same place. They don't realize you've reshaped it, turned it into something solid, something powerful. While they move on, forgetting what they did, you're evolving because of it. Not loudly, not for attention, but in a way that changes everything about you. Pain doesn't disappear. It doesn't magically fade into nothing. It stays, but it changes form. It becomes strength, awareness, discipline, hunger. It becomes the reason you don't settle anymore, the reason you don't fold under pressure, the reason you keep going when everything tells you to stop. And the most unsettling part, the same pain they gave you, is the exact reason you're no longer someone they can ever break again. Hate has a sound to it loud, desperate, almost theatrical. People think it comes from strength, from confidence, from knowing exactly who they are. But if you listen closely, really listen, it's shaky. It cracks in places they don't want you to notice. Because real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't waste energy tearing someone else down just to feel tall for a moment. The ones who hated you the most. They weren't reacting to who you were. They were reacting to what you reflected back at them. Something about you made them uncomfortable. Maybe it was your patience, your calm, your refusal to play their games. Maybe it was the way you kept moving forward without needing their approval. Whatever it was, it touched something inside them they didn't want to face. So they did what most people do when they feel exposed. They attacked. Not because you were weak, but because you were inconvenient. You didn't fit into the version of the world they were trying to control. You didn't respond the way they expected, didn't break the way they hoped. And that kind of unpredictability, it scares people who rely on control to feel secure. Watch how hate behaves. It exaggerates, distorts, creates stories that don't quite add up. It turns small things into big problems, twists your actions into something negative, even when there's nothing there. Why? Because it needs a reason to exist. It needs to justify itself. Otherwise, it would have to admit something far more uncomfortable. That the problem was never really you. They projected everything onto you. Their insecurity, their frustration, their fear of being overlooked or replaced. You became a target, not because you deserved it, but because it was easier than looking inward. It's always easier to point fingers than to ask yourself why you feel threatened in the first place. And the more you stayed steady, the worse it got. Because nothing irritates a fragile ego more than someone who refuses to react. They wanted you to argue, to defend yourself, to stoop to their level so they could feel justified. But when you didn't, when you stayed calm, focused, almost indifferent, it forced them into a corner. They didn't know how to escape. That's when hate starts revealing its cracks. You see it in the inconsistency. One moment they dismiss you like you're nothing. The next they're obsessing over your every move. One moment they act superior. The next they're trying to undermine you in subtle, desperate ways. It doesn't align. It can't align. Because it's not rooted in truth. It's rooted in insecurity trying to wear the mask of confidence. And slowly it turns on them. The energy they spent hating you starts draining them. The stories they created become harder to maintain. The image they tried to protect starts slipping. People notice. Not all at once, but enough to shift the perception. Because fake strength can only hold for so long before it collapses under its own weight. Meanwhile, you're still moving, still building, still evolving in ways they can't replicate, because they were too focused on you instead of themselves. That's the irony of it all. The hate they threw at you wasn't proof of your weakness. It was evidence of theirs. A quiet admission that something about you unsettled them enough to react. Enough to lose control. Enough to reveal parts of themselves they were trying so hard to hide. And without realizing it, they exposed exactly who they really were. Arrogance moves fast, loud steps, quick judgments, constant noise. It rushes to conclusions, decides who's worth something and who isn't in a matter of seconds. It looks at you once, just once, and thinks it has the whole story figured out. That's the confidence they wear, the kind that doesn't question itself, doesn't pause, doesn't doubt. But there's something fragile hiding underneath all that certainty, something that can't survive time. Because patience doesn't rush. Patience watches. It listens. It absorbs everything without needing to react right away. While arrogance is busy making noise, patience is collecting details, patterns, habits, weaknesses that no one else notices because they're too distracted trying to prove themselves. You didn't need to speak. You didn't need to interrupt. You just stayed there, quiet, observing, letting them show you exactly who they were without even realizing it. They thought your silence meant you didn't understand, that you were slow, passive, easy to overlook, that you didn't have the same fire they did, and that assumption, that overconfidence, it made them careless. They revealed too much. The way they treated people, the way they handled pressure, the way they crumbled when things didn't go their way. Arrogance always slips when it's tested. And you were patient enough to wait for that moment, not because you were weak, but because you knew something they didn't. Time exposes everything. It doesn't matter how loud someone is, how dominant they appear in the beginning. If it's not real, it won't last. And you understood that. You didn't chase quick wins or temporary validation. You were building something slower, something that could actually hold weight when things got difficult. While they were sprinting, trying to stay ahead, you were steady. Step by step, quiet progress that didn't need attention. You weren't trying to outshine them in the moment. You were outlasting them. And that's where the shift begins. Because arrogance depends on being seen. It feeds on attention, on reactions, on the illusion of control. But patience doesn't need any of that. It grows in the background, away from the noise, away from the pressure to perform. It gets stronger the longer it's ignored, and eventually the pace changes. They start slowing down, not all at once, but enough to notice. The confidence they had begins to feel forced. The certainty turns into hesitation. Because maintaining that image, being the loudest, the strongest, the most dominant, it takes energy. And over time, that energy runs out. Meanwhile, you're still there, still moving. Still improving in ways they didn't think were possible because they stopped paying attention too early. That's when patience hits, not like an explosion, but like a shift they can't ignore. Suddenly, you're not the same person they dismissed. Your presence feels different, more controlled, more grounded, harder to shake. The roles start to reverse without a single announcement, without any dramatic moment, just a quiet realization that they were wrong. And that realization, it stings more than anything loud ever could. Because arrogance hates being proven wrong. It hates realizing that the person it underestimated was never as small as it believed. It hates time, because time doesn't argue, doesn't explain. It just reveals. And by the time they see it, it's already too late to go back and change how they treated you. There's something unsettling about what grows in the dark, not because it's evil, but because it's unseen. People trust what they can watch, what they can measure, what they can interrupt. They feel comfortable when they think they understand the process, when they can predict the outcome. But the moment something starts changing where their eyes can't reach, that comfort disappears. You didn't transform in front of them. That's what bothers them the most. They saw the old version of you, clear, familiar, easy to label. They knew how to deal with that version, how to talk to it, how to dismiss it. You were predictable in their eyes, something they could place in a box and forget about. And once they made that decision, they stopped looking. That's where everything started. Because while they moved on, convinced nothing would change, you stepped into a space they couldn't follow. No noise, no announcements, no need to show progress. Just you, and the parts of yourself you could no longer ignore. The doubts, the habits, the weaknesses they used against you. They all came into focus when there was no one left to perform for. And that's where real transformation begins. Not in front of applause, not under validation, but in isolation. In moments where no one is watching, where no one cares, where quitting would be easy because no one would even notice. That's where you started rebuilding. Quiet adjustments at first, small changes that didn't look like much from the outside, but felt different on the inside. A shift in how you think, how you react, how you carry yourself when no one is there to judge it. They missed all of it. They didn't see the discipline forming in the background, the way you started controlling what once controlled you. They didn't hear the internal conversations, where you chose growth over comfort, where you stopped making excuses and started making decisions. To them, nothing was happening. To you, everything was changing. That's the advantage of the shadows. There's no pressure to impress, no expectation to meet. You get to fail, adjust, and try again without an audience keeping score. You get to experiment, to break old patterns without someone reminding you of who you used to be. In that space, identity isn't fixed. It's flexible. And you use that freedom to become something they wouldn't recognize. Piece by piece, you reshaped yourself. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. You took what was broken and made it stronger. You took what was scattered and made it focused. You stopped reacting the same way, stopped thinking the same way, stopped accepting the same things. And all of it happened so quietly that by the time it started to show, it felt sudden to everyone else. That's what confuses them, because from their perspective, you changed overnight. One moment you were the person they underestimated, and the next you weren't. They try to make sense of it, to figure out when it happened, how it happened, what they missed. But there's no clear answer, no single moment they can point to, because transformation doesn't announce itself. It builds in silence, grows in darkness, and reveals itself only when it's ready. And by the time they finally notice, they're not looking at the same person they thought they knew. They're looking at someone who was rebuilt, where they never thought to look. Success has a way of changing the lighting. Suddenly everything becomes clearer, sharper, harder to hide. The same people, the same faces, the same voices, but now you see them differently. Not because they changed overnight, but because success removes the shadows they used to hide in. Before, when you were struggling, unnoticed, easy to overlook, everything felt simpler. People didn't pay much attention. Their words were casual, their attitudes relaxed. Some ignored you, some doubted you. Some kept you around just enough to feel superior. It was comfortable for them, because you didn't challenge anything. But the moment things started shifting for you, the moment you began stepping into something bigger, the atmosphere changed. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough to feel it. The ones who used to dismiss you suddenly start watching, quietly at first, like they're trying to understand what's happening without making it obvious. The same people who never had time for you now notice your every move. They don't say much, but their attention says everything. Because success forces awareness, even in people who would rather stay blind. And then there are the others, the ones who smile a little too quickly, speak a little too nicely. Their tone changes, their energy shifts, but something feels off. It's not the kind of support that feels real. It's calculated, measured. Like they're adjusting to a new version of you they didn't expect to deal with. They weren't prepared for this outcome, so now they're trying to fit themselves into it. That's when you start seeing the difference. Genuine people don't need success to treat you right. They were there when things were quiet, when there was nothing to gain, nothing to attach themselves to. Their energy stays the same, steady, consistent, real. But the others, they shift with the situation. Their respect wasn't built on who you are, but on what you've become in their eyes. Success exposes that. It shows who was patient with you and who was just waiting. It shows who believed in you and who only believes now because it's convenient. It shows who celebrated your growth and who feels unsettled by it, even if they hide it behind polite words. You start noticing the small things, the hesitation in conversations, the subtle comparisons. The way some people try to remind you of your past, as if pulling you back will make them feel more comfortable. The way others suddenly want to be close, to be associated, to be part of something they once ignored. It's all there, clearer than ever. Because success doesn't just elevate you, it tests everyone around you. It puts pressure on their intentions, their loyalty, their honesty. Some pass without effort. Others crack in ways they didn't expect. And the most interesting part, you don't even need to confront it. You don't need to question anyone or demand explanations. People reveal themselves naturally when the dynamics change. All you have to do is watch, the same way you always have. Because now, you're not just seeing who they were when you had nothing. You're seeing who they are now, that you have something they didn't think you'd ever reach. They thought the first hit was enough, that whatever they threw at you would leave a mark deep enough to keep you down. That's how most people think. One good strike, one moment of pressure, one calculated attempt to break someone, and it's over. They expect you to stay exactly where you fell, replaying that moment, carrying it like a permanent weight. And for a while it probably looked like they were right. You slowed down. You went quiet. You stopped showing up the way you used to. From the outside, it looked like damage. Like something inside you had shifted in the worst way, and they took that as confirmation, proof that they had done enough. But what they didn't understand is that not every pause is defeat. Some pauses are recalibration. A moment where everything inside you starts rearranging, where you begin to see things differently. Not just what happened, but why it happened, how it affected you, what it revealed. It's not weakness, it's processing. And while they were celebrating too early, thinking the story had already ended, you were still writing it. That's where the comeback begins. Not in front of them, not for their reaction, but within yourself. Quiet decisions. Subtle changes. You stop reacting the same way. Stop giving energy to the same things. You become more controlled, more aware, less predictable. The version of you they hit slowly disappears, and that's the part they never prepare for. Because they're still focused on that old version. The one that took the hit, the one that stumbled, the one they think they understand. They expect the same reactions, the same patterns, the same outcome if they ever push again. They believe they've already figured you out. But you're not playing the same role anymore. You've adapted. The things that once shook you don't land the same way. The words that once carried weight now feel empty. The pressure that once made you hesitate now sharpens your focus. It's not that you forgot what happened, it's that you used it. You turned it into awareness, into discipline, into a kind of resilience they didn't think you were capable of. And then it happens. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a moment where the roles shift without warning. They try again, maybe with the same attitude, the same confidence, expecting the same result. But this time it doesn't work. The reaction they were waiting for never comes. The control they thought they had slips. That's when the realization starts creeping in. Slow at first. Uncomfortable. Hard to accept. Because the person they thought they could break isn't there anymore. What stands in front of them now is something they didn't account for. Something built from everything they tried to use against you. Stronger, quieter, harder to read. And that's what unsettles them the most. Not just that you came back, but that you came back different. The comeback doesn't need noise to be felt. It's in the way you carry yourself now. The way you don't react, don't chase, don't prove. The way you move forward without looking for validation or revenge. It's controlled, intentional, and impossible to ignore. Because the truth is, the first hit only mattered because it gave you something to build from, and now, every step you take after that hits harder than anything they ever did.